Leila, let's go back to the beginning. You're one of 8 children.
I am.
Tiny family.
Yeah.
Just
small.
Small.
Yep.
You're number 4. You're
Yeah.
squat bang in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me and my sister, we share middle children, like the middle child job.
Title?
Yeah, that title, yeah.
Wow, 8 kids is a lot of kids.
So many, so many.
Your poor mum.
Yeah.
Good God. So when you were, you left your community though when you were 18 months.
Yeah.
And moved to Bendigo. Can you tell us about that?
I don't really have a lot of memory of that time because I was literally only 18 months old, but from what I've heard from other people around that particular time, there was a little bit of contention around whether or not I should have left. There was people because basically my guardian that I grew up with in Bendigo had to essentially ask my whole entire family as opposed to just my parents.
Right.
Because within the Yolngu universe and, the community as a whole is your family.
Right.
So there were people that didn't want me to go and there were people that did want me to go, and eventually the decision was made that I would end up going down to Bendigo. So it's always one of those questions that I've always been really curious about asking, like why me?
Yeah.
Out of 8 children, you could literally pick, and it was me that was picked. So it's a question that I've never had answered, and people, I don't know, I think they feel a little bit uncomfortable about talking about it for a number of reasons, and reasons that I'm not aware of either. But I've kind of come to a place where I'm okay with not knowing the answer because I'm extremely grateful that that decision was made regardless.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I guess when you are that young, and you had a cousin that lived with you as well when you were so young, so you would only speak in your traditional language for quite some time, right?
Yep.
So when you're 5, you're thrown right in the deep end to learn English when you start school.
Yeah.
So sink or swim. How did you go?
Pretty much. Well, basically when I used to go to play school or preschool, and I knew English because we have a lot of non-Indigenous nurses and teachers and those sort of things that come up to community. So I'd heard it before and I could understand it, but at that time I didn't actually know English. So I'd literally be at preschool with a whole bunch of blonde-haired, blue-eyed little kids, and they'd be talking to me and I'd understand what they'd say. And I'd reply to them in Yolngu, like in our traditional language, and they'd be like, what did she just say? I have no idea what she's saying. So so that was quite interesting. And then when I started at school, my guardian actually came with me on my first day of school and basically told everyone, look, this is Leila and she's from somewhere far away from here and she doesn't know English, so all of you in this class have to help her learn. And basically it kind of went very similarly to that scene in The Colour Purple. I don't know if you've seen The Colour Purple.
For a long time.
Yeah, so one of my favourite movies of all time. But there's a scene in there where Celie is teaching, Celie is being taught how to read, and they're basically, her sister's basically pointing at different objects in the room. And that's how she learns how to read. And that's basically how it went for me. So it was quite interesting seeing that scene in the movie when I was older, and I was like, oh, that's a lot like how my life went.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, when you're a little kid, starting school it's really scary anyway.
Yeah.
But not being able to speak English, what was that? And being an Indigenous child as well.
So your guardians didn't speak English at home?
Yeah, they did.
They did?
Yeah, but it was just because my cousin that I was living with at the time spoke Yolngu, so I'd speak to him in Yolngu. So like English just wasn't something that I was really overly worried about at the time.
Did your guardians understand it?
Yeah, they understood it. Yeah.
Because you were extremely shy as a child as well, weren't you? And I've heard that you've said a lot of Indigenous children are really shy.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just that whole idea of being outside of your comfort zone. And I know that everyone experiences that at some point in their life, but the wonderful thing about coming from an Aboriginal community is you're so involved in each other's life and you feel really comfortable in that space, and you're able to be the person that you aren't necessarily when you're outside of that space.
Right.
And that, it's so comfortable that when Indigenous kids are put into a space where they don't feel comfortable, they kind of go inward.
Just retreat.
Yeah. And I was definitely one of those kids for sure, definitely.
So what was school like for you?
School was... I liked school, like I really did. I've always had a thing about learning. Like I love learning, hence probably why I'm doing like 1,000,003 things. But I've always had a thirst for learning, so that was something that I thoroughly enjoyed about being at school. But as a whole, I had my friends, and that was basically it. I wasn't really good at being like a social butterfly, and I wasn't a part of like that, you know, so-called popular group or anything like that, but I had my friends, and that's how I kind of got through school, was in that friendship group. But I wouldn't really talk to anyone that I didn't have to talk to.
Right.
You know, I only spoke to teachers because I had to and coordinators because I had to.
Right.
But besides that, I wouldn't like go out of my way to talk to people, and if people tried to talk to me, I'd just be like, oh my gosh, and just retreat.
Right, yeah.
It was kind of like that fight
or flight
kind of mode.
Yeah, your fight or flight kicked in when someone would talk to you. That's pretty full on, isn't it?
Yeah. So
how long did it last for? Did it take you through high school? Like, did you feel like that the whole time?
Yeah, I did. I was just really like, I think it was really just the whole idea of just talking to people that I didn't know that really freaked me out.
Right.
You know, and also just, you know, when you're a kid, then you're constantly worrying about how other people are going to judge you and see you and all those sort of things. And then on top of the fact that I was also Indigenous on top of that, and how people would perceive me as well as that. So it was just easier to just not talk to people.
Were there many other Indigenous kids at your school?
Oh, no.
Wow.
Yeah, so per capita, Bendigo is, where I grew up in Bendigo, is the most Anglo-Saxon community in Australia.
Wow.
So lots and lots of white people.
Yeah.
And basically the kind of picture that I make for people is like I was a little black dot in a sea of white.
Yeah.
Because that's literally what it was like growing up in Bendigo. I didn't have to deal with a lot of racism though, which is interesting because a lot of my contemporaries and people that I know at some point in their life had to deal with racism. But it was interesting because it's not something that I've really had to deal with at any time prior to my moving to Melbourne. Before that, it wasn't necessarily ever a thing. And I think, again, I attest that to the friendship group that I had and the fact that they would never allow that to come into our space.
Yeah, wow. That's
and I think also because I was one of the youngest as well, like my friends just automatically protected me because of that fact. And then also on top of that, them knowing that I was Indigenous, so it was always nipped in the bud before I even had a chance to react to it.
Great.
Yeah.
God, what special friends.
Yeah.
Stacey and I loved researching you because we were, you know, growing up as, you know, white kids. We saw ourselves on TV all the time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have seen anyone that really looked like
you.
Not so
much.
Yeah. But it was kind of like around 5 where you saw Yothu Yindi and you're like, shit, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
That's a young epiphany.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing when you see someone that looks exactly like you on television, and I think that's, you know, one of the most important things now is that we reflect the diversity that is Australia. I think that's really, really important.
Gotcha.
Because history in general has been really whitewashed, and like in any country in the world, whoever is the conqueror is the person that gets to write the history. So I think it's really important that, you know, as people that are awake to these things now, that we shift that narrative ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, and wonderful things like SBS, for example, and having a space like NITV where we can tell our stories is really, really important. And I think it's so important that kids see themselves reflected. And I think that's also another really good and important thing with the AFLW, for example.
Yeah, totally.
That, you know, young girls are seeing women play a sport that they love and they enjoy, and that's another pathway that's been created because of that. So for me, you know, even at 5, it's something that sticks with you for a really long time, and it definitely shifts the way that you think about yourself and your
changed the trajectory
self-talk.
of your life.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah.
And what you thought was possible in your mind for where you were heading.
No, 100%.
Amazing at 5 years old.
Yeah. But how awesome now that you are that person for so many other Indigenous or women in general, but how powerful that you are that representation for young Indigenous kids to go, look at this. This is incredible. I can do that. Why not? Like you are what your 5-year-old self looked up to.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. Like, I don't really think about it a lot, but people have said that to me, and I'm like, oh, you know, if I am that person to someone, like, that's great.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy that I am, and, you know, people, you know, I remember, I can't exactly remember who said it to me or where I heard it, but someone said, oh, you know, like, I want to be like you, and I said, and like my kind of response to that is like, no, be better.
Oh, yeah.
Like, be a better version of me, because I want you to excel more and more, and because I walk on the bridges of those who built the bridges before me, and I want to make that foundation stronger for the next, and then the next after that. So, yeah, hopefully,
you are.
So hopefully, there's other young leaders that come up and do even bigger and better things.
Being a really shy girl, it's amazing that you ended up doing radio and then TV.
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought? How did that come about?
Yeah, if I was like talking to like the former me and saying, yo, this is like all the stuff that you're doing right now, I'd have been like, get out of town. Couldn't have even done half of that stuff. So it's interesting just even thinking about that, and how far. And it's funny because you don't really have time to reflect on things.
Yeah.
And I recently did a talk at Melbourne Girls Grammar, and basically it was a slideshow of my life and, you know, how far I'd come over the years and whatnot. And it was that moment where in that moment I got to reflect and look at all the different things that I'd done, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff in, 11, 10 years or whatever the case may be. But again, you know, Margaret has been a big part of my life and has essentially opened all those doors for me, which, I'm always really big on taking opportunities when they come at you. So, you know, there's just been lots of opportunities put in my path, and I've said yes to a lot of them. Because
what were you studying when you got approached to say, we want you involved in this radio show and also the TV show? Yeah, so I was literally 6 months out of high school. Right. When I got asked to do Margaret. So Margaret had already been going for a number of years on community radio, and Grant Hansen and J.S. Danino were the original creators of the radio show, because they saw that in mainstream radio and television that there was no Indigenous representative. So they had to have known that you were into footy and stuff though, right? Yeah. Like you were around... Yeah. Okay. Yeah, how did you even know them, for them to know she would be ace? Yeah, so Grant Hansen, who's the creator of Margaret, through our kinship system, he was a part of a band called Blackfire that used to tour with Yothiindi back in the day. Right. So he was adopted into Yolngu family, and through our kinship system I actually call him Dad. But to make life easier for people who freak out whenever they hear anything that's just a little bit too confusing, I just tell them that he's my uncle. Right. So I was like, oh, that's perfect, I get that, it's in a nice small neat box and I understand that. Yeah. So hold on, I don't want a neat box right now, because I find this fascinating, and of course wasn't taught this at school. Yep. You're not the only one. Lots of people weren't taught. No, I know. Which I honestly feel embarrassed even asking you, because this should so be a part of what we are taught. Oh yeah, 100%. But can you explain the kinship, and even because you're engaged, and I just want to paint that picture of you know, a world that a lot of us are not familiar with. Yeah. So basically, in the Yolngu universe, which is the universe that I belong to, because I'm Yolngu, and it would be generally similar in different communities, and it would have been like that down here in Victoria as well, prior to colonisation. But basically in the Yolngu universe, there's no such thing as a friend. So everyone is connected
to you through your kinship system. So you know that this person over here, depending on their milk, so each generation that's born is given a particular milk, and every 5 generations it rotates back to the first, if that makes sense. So I'm Billinyan, so anyone that's got the same skin name as me is my sister. And anyone that's Balangi is the opposite of me, so that person is my brother. And that's how you figure it out. So, so what happens is non-Indigenous people come into our space, and lots of Aboriginal people, lots of Yolngu, are really awkward around them for a period of time, and it's because they don't understand what their relationship is to that person.
Right, got you, okay.
But as soon as they're adopted and I say, oh, this person is my yappa or my sister, oh yeah, now I know how I'm supposed to act around this person. If I have an avoidance kinship with them, or if they are responsible for things for me, or I'm responsible for things for them. So it's that kind of concept that comes into play.
Wow, it's fascinating, isn't it? And how incredible.
So then Grant, when he was adopted into Ani Alme Yunupingu's family, which automatically made him my marlo or my dad, when he was adopted into that family, he basically was given responsibility. So what happened was, when I moved from Bendigo to Melbourne, family essentially rang him up and said, look, you know, Leila's moving to Melbourne. That now means that she's solely your responsibility. So
how do they choose who gets adopted in, though? How did he get adopted in the first place?
It's connectedness.
Just through
friendship. And spending time, and it's something that doesn't happen quite often. You know, it's not like something that's given like willy-nilly. And people need to understand that when you're adopted into family, it also means that you're
going to do something.
You take
given, like lots of responsibility. And you know, Zach's obviously understanding that now.
Who's your fiance? And so he was adopted in to your community. And so then
he's got responsibilities.
Because you were saying that marriage is a very white premise, where you don't get married in your community because it's a part of your kinship. You two are essentially already married, right?
Wow. That's right. So like when I got taken in essentially by Grant, when I moved here to Melbourne, then I became his sole responsibility. So like he put me through my last year of high school, and all of the things that came into play with that. He had to pay for my mum's flight down to Melbourne to see me graduate, all that sort of stuff. And even now, like even though I'm 30, he's still responsible for me. So he still does things for me when I need them and whatnot. So it's like, it's a lifelong thing. When you get adopted and you've got responsibility.
It's like a whole village, isn't it?
Exactly.
Raising people together.
Exactly. So like I was born into that, but then people like Grant and Zach, for example, they are given that responsibility when they become a part of the family.
Has footy always been a huge part of your life?
Footy's always been something that's been a part of my life for a really long time. My dad played football when he was alive. All of my nephews and cousins and stuff have all played football at one point or another. My brothers, my sister now plays football up in Arnhem Land. So it's definitely been something that's been a part of my life for a really long time.
And so
but I've never actually had a team until I moved to Melbourne. But prior to that, I was just a lover of football, not necessarily a lover of a particular football team.
Right.
Whereas my family are very kind of, you know, lots of my family go for Essendon and a bunch go for West Coast because of our connection to David Wirrapunda. He's our cousin my cousin through his dad's side, and then a few of them back for Freo because of my uncle Gary Durkay that played for Fremantle. So we've got a few kind of connections here and there, which has kind of played out in the family. But but I didn't actually have a particular team until I moved to Melbourne. So
you were quite a good football player yourself, though, weren't you?
I was a bit of a tomboy growing up, so I liked just playing sports in general. And my favourite thing was just beating the boys at anything.
Yeah, awesome.
So I tried really hard to do that, and most of the time I would. So that was really good. I liked that feeling.
Do you think that if you had have been able to see women playing AFL when you were that young, that you possibly would be playing now?
Yeah, I reckon I would have, for sure. Definitely.
I think a lot of women in general would have fallen into, who fell into different sports that were quite athletic, would have
gone
totally
into AFL.
Yeah. The only issue that I had when I was younger, well, just generally, was I wasn't really a good team player. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Because I was more of a track and field person.
You just wanted to grow up and be Kathy Freeman.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I wanted to be Kathy Freeman, and I wanted to be a backup singer in Youth Indie. So it was good because my only competitor was me.
Yeah, right.
And I was only dealing with myself. Yeah. And it wasn't until I was much older and I started playing basketball and netball that I learnt how to play in a team.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is really so important, isn't it?
Especially
yeah,
of course. Kids. Yeah, definitely. I get horrible white line fever. So.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's not horrible, it's a good thing.
Stacey's like that too. You said that you didn't experience much racism when you were growing up. Have you found now, being in this world, which is a very male-dominated world, being a female, an Indigenous female, have you found much discrimination in any one of those areas?
Yes and no. I think being in the Margaret space again is a space of safety, and it's that whole kind of concept of safety in numbers, right. Because the majority of us are Indigenous. Being a woman, sometimes you get people that are like, oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. But I'm like,
sports
are
area?
You getting paid to do this? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, there are moments like that, and like just little tedious things that annoy me, like people saying, oh, looks like you've put on a few kilos, or, oh, you wore that. So people are like, oh, didn't you wear that 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or something? I'm like, what's that got to do with like the content that's coming out of my mouth?
You know what? That's so funny, because I've put this jacket on, and this is a podcast as well as a video, and I have worn this before doing videos similar to this, and I thought, I bet you I get comments about it. Who gives a fuck? Yeah. But I'm like, they'll go, she's worn that before.
It's all about, it's nothing about what's coming out of your mouth. It's everything about how it looks.
Yeah, exactly. So, I remember one time I was in Darwin, and someone that I know was just like, so I noticed that, over the last few weeks, like, you put on a fair bit of, you're looking a bit pudgy now. And I just felt like saying, oh, well, at least I can change that. You can't change your face, but I didn't, because I'm nicer than that, and I just thought it. But it just annoyed me that, people
look at your physical,
look at that,
because
whereas it wouldn't matter if Derek or Grant wore the same tie for 20 weeks in a row.
No
one would even notice or even think about that. So I find it interesting the way that people still perceive women in that space. So it has been hard, but again, it's been so good because I've had the support of Shelley and the other women that have been on the show, and then, people behind the show, like our makeup ladies and our wardrobe ladies and all that sort of stuff. So there is a good kind of strong sisterhood, even in the midst of all this manliness and testosterone. And
it is a show, though, that pulls more women on than any other football show. That must be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. And it's just good to hear a different perspective.
Totally. Well, because 50% of the people who watch football and are into football are chicks. So
that's
why
right.
is our voice not represented more? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it just comes back to that boys' club.
Yeah.
And the fact that, there are people that still kind of adhere to that kind of way of thinking. And, it isn't until those spaces are taken up by people that are much more liberal thinking and that aren't so narrow-minded, that's going to change.
Yeah, right. 100%. When the AFLW did kick off, is it just over a year ago now, isn't it?
Yep.
What was that like for you?
I think for me in general, just the fact that that whole entire first game was a lockout.
Yeah, I know.
And Carlton
Wasn't it the best?
was amazing.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, these young women who, you know, played football kind of on the outskirts for so long were now being acknowledged for the skill that they had, that they'd already had for years and years and years. Yeah. But all of a sudden it was like kind of in the spotlight. And again, like I said, the fact that now kids, young girls can go into sports shops and ask for boots and not be looked at funny.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have young boys who love the women that are playing football, not just their heroes that are the male players, and I think that's really, really cool.
It was proof, though, that there was a need for it.
Oh,
that
yeah,
there was
100%.
space for it that was just being totally suppressed for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
That there was a place for women to be playing football.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
people wanted to see it.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I think proved a lot, not just in football. I think just in sports in general for women.
Yeah.
I think it certainly proved a lot in that area, don't you?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And, you know, we put in as much effort and sometimes even more, you know. And
What a
it's
proof.
Yeah, and it's funny because people like talk about people being strong and resilient and, you know, using all these words, and I think about the people that are those people, and in my life they've all been women.
Yeah.
And you know, and I don't want to, you know, speak ill of men or any of that sort of stuff, but, you know, we go through a lot as women just generally.
Yeah.
And you know, and me myself, you know, I've gone through a lot in the last 10 years of being who I am, and, you know, sometimes, you know, those moments when you get to reflect and think, oh my God, how am I even still here doing the stuff that I'm doing with all the other things that have happened in my life? So yeah, so, you know, women are just awesome, I think.
Yeah, so spot on. And you are bloody awesome. And it's been so incredible to have you a part of this. Layla, thank you so much.
Yeah, no
Thank you.
worries.